Hey team, Jen here. I am coming to you this week to say thank you very much for your work as we move past the halfway point of our very rigorous course. I wanted to thank you so much for your hard work and for the effort that you've put in. There've been a lot of readings, we've done a lot of different kinds of deliverables. So I just wanted to say that I really appreciate your hard work and to hang in there. We can finally see the finish line. This week, we are tackling some narratives from African slaves who were brought to America from Africa. And it kind of moves us into a new consideration of American literature that can bring us back in reflection to the very first week and the second week of the class, in which we read narratives of colonization, narratives of um, you know, of kind of races coming head to head in kind of a cultural combat. This week we revisit some of those themes, but they have a different look, they have a different feel. This week we're reading work from Equiano. He writes his narrative in his passage between his native lands of Africa and coming to America. You'll find that one of your response paper options this week is to address some of the controversy surrounding Equiano's narrative. A lot of scholars believe that Equiano was in fact not African, that he was actually born in America, South Carolina to be exact. So one of the questions that I ask for you this week pertaining to Equiano's narrative is whether or not that matters much to how we understand the points that Equiano wants to make in his narrative and the call for action that he initiates in this narrative. How important is it that he may not have been African? Coming from the native land of Africa, the native continent. So the other readings that we're doing this week are in line with Equiano. Equiano kind of gets us started. We're going to read some Phillis Wheatley poetry. Reading poetry is uncomfortable for so many students. We saw some poetry back in week 3 when we read Bradstreet. We had a lot of poetry to read from Bradstreet there. This week we have quite a bit of poetry to read from Phillis Wheatley, and her poem particularly on being brought from Africa to America is going to receive a ton of scrutiny from us this week in the forums. Both aspects of the prompt this week for the forum ask you to interrogate Wheatley's poem. And I'm going to be looking for you to really dissect it and close read it and analyze that poem by honing in on key words and also analyzing just simply the title of this poem and what the significance of that title is. Then we go into Harriet Jacobs' narrative, Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl. And for me, this is one of my favorite of the American slave narratives because I just find it so problematic and so intriguing in so many ways that Harriet Jacobs is really narrating her experience as a slave, just like Equiano and Douglass and Wheatley are, but also she does it from a vantage point that's very unique in this kind of narrative, this kind of slave narrative, in that she ends up taking a kind of refuge and hiding. And she gets to see the world around her from a very unique vantage point in which she can have a perspective that is rare in other African narratives, African American narratives. So I'm very interested to see what we make of this writing from Jacobs this week. And finally, we're reading one of the most popular slave narratives of American slave narratives, and that is Frederick Douglass's narrative. And in this narrative, so much. We're just reading excerpts this week from all of these. But Douglass tackles so many huge issues for African American slaves. And we can certainly pull out many threads from this and connect it to readings that we've read in the past and also readings right here in this unit of passages and passing. In addition to the readings, which are quite plentiful this week and very rich, I want you to do the Forum 5 post, which is focused on Phillis Wheatley's poem, and also the Week 5 response paper. Now, we haven't written a response paper since Week 2. So before you even start to brainstorm your approach for the Week 5 response paper, it's a very good idea to go back to the comments that I left for you on your Week 2 response paper and make sure that you are keeping an eye open for repeating any of those mistakes, keeping in mind the suggestions that I gave you there, and trying to apply those in your Week 5 essay so that I can see that you are attempting to learn and attempting to grow in terms of your writing style. In the Week 5 essay, I give you 3 different prompts to choose from. The first one I already mentioned pertains to Equiano and whether or not it matters if he was from the continent of Africa or not. The second prompt refers to Harriet Jacobs. And one thing that I've always found so intriguing about her narrative is her reference to herself as a girl, even though she's writing as a grown woman with a child of her own. So the second question wants you to interrogate what rhetorical function does that play in her narrative? Where are the moments that she seems girlish or girly? And where are the instances where she's undeniably womanly? And why do you think that she's trying to pitch her story to the American public through this lens of girlhood? So that's the second option. The third option is allows you to kind of sift through the text that you found most important or most salient and to choose 2 of those texts to perform a comparison and a contrast about concerning their personal experience or their passages. So what experiences do these 2 texts have in common? What do they have that's different? And really honing in on the specifics of both of those to hone in on something that you care about the most. So other than that, no matter which of the prompts you choose, I want you to display close reading and analysis using salient passages from the text to support your observations. And it's very important in this Week 5 essay that you are making aggressive arguments that include, if you can, all 3 parts of the process of argumentation: a judgment, acknowledgement of counter argument, and a sense of the stakes. If you have any questions about what that means or what that looks like, you're in luck, because the 2 supplemental videos that I've included for you this week, one of them is about how to make arguments. The second one is about how to contextualize your writing so that it's very specific and refined rather than very broad. So both of those videos are going to serve you well before you start writing your response paper this week. Whew. Anyway, we have a lot on our plate this week, and big deal in terms of the content of the readings this week. So important to read these African American slave narratives. They really do influence how we should think about America as a nation and America's history. So I'm interested to learn what you think about this edition and where it's leading us. I hope you guys have a wonderful Week 5, and I will see you here again next week. Bye for now.